going through the slides, when we are talking about a data-driven HR, what generally I've seen the perception is there that everybody says that it's the proverbial magic trick when people say that there is people analytics, HR analytics, and then they kind of magically expect things to work out. But it certainly has its own naiveties to it. Back in the day when people used to say magic, it used to be science. So the same thing applies with data analytics as well. We need to understand the core methodology of how it works out. And usually with HR, it is almost in front of you when you're looking at things. So it is a conscious study of the usage of the data that the organization is generating unconsciously in a day-to-day functions, which in the scope of HR is referred to as people data or HR data. Now, while I say this, I also then kind of understand that there are multiple technologies come into work when, if we are looking into HR functions. So there are these functions that are there, the 7 functions. So we have recruitment, performance management, learning and development, succession planning, rewards or compensation benefits or comp and ben, and the HR information systems. Now, out of these, 6 are the ones which generate data actively, and all this data is captured within the information system. Now, for an organization, what really happens is sometimes the HRIS looks into reporting, and sometimes for mature organizations, you have specific center of excellence developed for reporting and analytics. So we can look into each facet that is there in terms of recruiting or the function of learning and development, performance management, succession, rewards, and everything as data construction or data collection points. And then they, in a life cycle, keep collecting data. And based on that, we do studies in terms of what KPIs can be generated, how can it be done. And there is no specific domain or no specific technology that is used. You can start with basic for Microsoft Excel right down to using R and Python. And that basically is a decision that an organization has to make, is how deeply they want to get invested with the data. Now, when I talk about a mature HR model, what generally happens, and this when I'm speaking in this term of in terms of this model, the operational HR, HR analytics, and strategic HR, mature HR models are used in companies like Procter and Gamble. You have GE Aviation, GE Sustainable Energy, then Johnson and Johnson's, Philips, and Medtronic. So these are some companies which utilize this model, which have very strong people analytics or HR analytic teams, which in a very cyclic economy of data, take data from operational HR, push it towards an analytics system or push it towards the team that looks into it, feeds it towards strategic HR to make the decisions, and then it pushes back into operational HR. Now, the misconception sometimes really is that people analytics or HR analytics is a answer providing organization or an answer providing team. It rarely is that. It is something which is more of an advisory role to it. Data does not give direct answers. Data gives possible answers, and the answers for an organization has to be taken by the leadership. That is where the play of the strategic HR comes in. And that is how the circular economy of data for HR works in a mature HR model. Now, in terms of the happy flow of HR, and this is something that uh, it was initially called the flow of HR analytics or HR data. Gaurav said that this is the happy flow, which I agree is the happy flow, where we look into very specific things. So it is broken down into 5 very specific points where we have the identification and this can be spanning across like multiple domains, and I'll come to the domains in terms of problem statement. So first I'll just walk you through the entire process. So when in how we are working out is that we look into specific domains. So if it is coming from L&D, we are getting questions from strategic side as well as the operational side as well. And the biggest question is not what is happening, why is it happening? Now, why is the bigger question over here. Then in the identification process, we define that problem statement in terms of why, what is happening, why is always the first question. And then we come to the definition point of view, where we start defining the why, and looking at why things are happening. We're able to start correlating in terms of what data metrics or what are the points that are there. If it is looking towards a learning and development organization, we might be looking into, let's say, the engagement or the compliant behavior of the employees. Now, for an organization, if you're looking at learning and development, there might be a compliance side and there might be an engagement side. So the compliance side is something where there are a specific kind of set of trainings where where the team has to take those training in order to be compliant to work within the organization or within certain functions. So that is something that cannot be dictated in terms of how people are absorbing. Engagement is not directly correlated to the compliance point of view. From that perspective, we then have the engagement point of view, where people are asking for trainings, and that is how we define it. So the example of L&D is where we start segregating whether it is compliance nature or engagement nature. Now, based on the definition of why things are happening, we start collecting and analyzing the data. And we need to start creating this cause and effect relationship about where the data comes in, what is the behavior that is there. And when we look into data, it's not specifically that you'll be able to read the behavior of each employee or behavior of each person that works within the organization. But this is something what we call as data trends, and those trends then have this cause and effect relationship. Once that cause and effect relationship is established, we will then be able to understand why some things are happening, and what is happening and what is being done. Now, when the data is then collected, there is a analysis part where we look into start answering the why. Still over here, the answering of that why is from a very data driven perspective. There is no visualizations. Then we move into the storytelling part. Now, all the data that is collected, the scenarios based compilation of the options in terms of what is to be done by strategic HR, is developed in a way where we look into user stories. And then we start with the visualization. What would happen if there are, let's say, 3 scenarios that the team has collected, and what are the implications, what are the collaterals, and then we leave it to them. After the storytelling part, we then leave it towards the strategic teams to take a decision. HR data analytics or the HR reporting teams mostly works on generating these insights. They suggest the decisions that are there. They are not actively giving the decisions into the organization. And this is where the collection and the analysis of data kind of comes into play. So this is where the happy flow is. There might be instances where we need to kind of go back from the collect and analyze to right back into square one, where we are re-identifying the problem statement, and it can become a sad flow if there are multiple iterations towards it. But then the happy flow is very straightforward, very defined 5 steps, and then you get the outcomes.
And outcomes are just the insights.
Yeah, just the insights and the suggested measures that have to be taken. Because when the data is being collected, you are and for an organization which is mature with data and then also complying with data privacy and all regulatory compliances, because for organizations that are there with medical domain or medical instruments domain or even in the pharma domain, you have the limitation of not being able to give name level data. And the decision that has to be taken, which will directly be applicable on the end user, is based on the core operational or the strategic HR sites. That is why we have HR BPs in place, which then look into all these insights and then take the decisions of things to be implemented. And then the cycle of, if you go back, then the cycle of operational HR comes back in, and then people analytic goes back inside, then it goes to feed in with the strategic HR. So this cycle is a continuous cycle. It's a continuous improvement or a circular economy of data, like how we call it. So going from this, you'll see that most of the in the 3 points that are their identification, definition, and storytelling, there is this word why, which has been highlighted very significantly in a different color. Now, why is something that is very specific. So the problem statement then can come in from a single domain. Like from the 6 functions that are there, which are actually generating the data, it can be one. It can be cross-functional, which can be, let's say, you're looking into correlation between learning and development and attrition. Or maybe, let's say, you're looking into using engagement based on policies and then your holidays that are there. So that is the cross-functional role. And then there are role-based ones where, let's say, the talent team is looking into something, or maybe the L&D teams are looking into something. And this kind of goes between the functional and cross-functional ones as well. And then the last one is where the strategy driven why questions are there. Strategy driven is where the leadership gives the uh, base statement, and then we start creating the requirement analysis, and then we start looking into what data is available. Now, while I'm speaking about all this, it may seem very much aligned towards the data analytics side of things, and it is, I'll not disagree. But the point is that when we are talking about HR data, we need to understand that the HR data is also related to human sentiment. And that is why a reporting team or an analytics team does not directly give like the bottom line to any problem statements. They are always decisive indicators or decisive insights that are provided, which then is pushed toward the leadership for options. So this was like a brief overview in terms of how the HR data analytics works and how I have been working. Because my pediology, the kind of education that I've had is not HR driven. I've done my bachelor's in programming, and then I've done my master's in uh, communication research and methodology, and then I've got into HR. So my understanding towards all this is very data driven. So kind of want to open up the floor to have ideas or maybe have discussion in terms of what you see that is there. What are things that you think would be a viable problem statement?
Amit, can I suggest if you can take up an example, I'm sure everyone has understood it, but
Yeah.
still if we can keep a small or a short case study kind of a thing, we'll get a better visualization of it.
Yeah, so as such, right now the data is not there. There is no specific data point, but there is one
That's fine.
example that I would like to share. So imagine there are 6 people in an organization, 4 males, 2 females. And this is a question when it comes from inclusion and diversity. So we promote 2 females within that organization and 2 males within the organization. Numerically, you're promoting 2 females and 2 males. That is equal. But then if you're not doing the data representation correctly, you're basically saying you're promoting 100% of your female population and only 50% of your male population, which itself is correct, but the underlying data points is something that is missing. And that is where the storytelling comes into play. So it's not very difficult to, manipulate data, but at the same time, when you are doing those visualizations, you also have to maintain those small short points that are there, which explains the entire story.
Great. So let's see. The blank screens, if they can, light up a bit, if we can see the faces, and then see, we have purposely kept not a very information and a knowledge heavy session, but it's more of, giving you some insights and, take your questions and answer them so that, you get a better insights. So the success of the session will depend on how will you participate and how many questions you ask, and we'll try to answer them all.
Yeah, hi.
Yes, Rukmini.
Yeah, wanted to know like which software or what exactly you use for this data analytics. I mean, how do you? Yeah, so
The tools that we
so
use,
that
right?
was my thing actually.
So Rukmini, I would like to answer that.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Rukmini, as far as the tools are concerned, every organization is different, the setup is different, and the tools are different. But the thing is that the logic remains the same everywhere. So here, what we want to encourage or what we want to influence, as Vivek sir says, we want to influence the thought process. Let's say you come up with the proper problem statement, and then we'll give you the logic. So the tool does not matter. The tools can be as simple as Microsoft Excel. But yeah, it is about the logic that we will put behind.
And just to add to what Gaurav said, so it is, and as you grow within as you grow with the organization, and as the organization grows, I've seen smaller consulting organizations or smaller organizations like startups, which basically start with a very rudimental type of their HR base, which can be Cornerstone Basics or something like that, where all the analytics is done within the system. There are out of the box solutions that are present, so that is something that can be used. But the point over here is that when we are looking into such insights, it's not technology that matters. We need to look at such data as data itself, and not something that is platform driven. An analysis, a good HR data analyst or a good HR business analyst is not dependent upon system tools such as Workday or maybe Cornerstone Analytics or ServiceNow Analytics. They will be able to do the same hypotheses or the same study and scenario building based on the data provided on Microsoft Excel. Or maybe if you're a little proficient with Microsoft, you can go into Power BI, and then you always have those data visualization tools or like Click and Tableau. So it's the approach that matters. It can be as simple as creating pie charts or bar charts sometimes.
Sure.
So Cornerstone gives you the complete solution, complete package inside it.
Yeah, so Cornerstone as a product it was initially primarily started as a learning management system, and then it started evolving into more of an ERP, or let's say the more in line of what Workday and SAP has been. So it is now providing solutions for small scale businesses as Cornerstone Basics. Now that
Okay.
basically take cares of everything from the learning side to the recruitment, and it has those machine learning algorithms which maybe cut down the entire recruiting period, or let's say resume parsing that has to be done manually. So they have those abilities, something which was initially done by a recruiter, end line recruiter, who would be going through the resumes and then figuring out who has to be selected, who hasn't to be selected. Now that is something that is automatically done in such solutions. So there is that basic software that's there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean it's a good to know information right now, but then we here are talking about data analytics. So
Yeah.
guys, the floor is still open. You may come up with the situation. I mean, if you don't have questions, just come up with creative situations where you think that in your day-to-day HR work, data can play a role. Data can play a role to take a decision, or let's say an informed decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vivek sir, I wanted to say something.
Yeah, please, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amit. It was really insightful. I wanted to, recently I came across an article where there was a gentleman writes about the difference between HR metrics and HR analytics. So he goes on to write in that particular article, HR metrics are basically metrics which measure different aspects. But analytics is a step further, which basically connects with the business outcomes. So that's how he goes on to write. It's a very small, short, article I read, but it was pretty interesting and pretty new to me. So your take on this particular differentiation, can you just elaborate and give more insights on this particular aspect?
So Atif, before
Yeah.
Amit takes over, I would like to sum it up in short.
Yeah.
HR metrics is a subset of HR analytics. HR analytics is a very broad term, and HR metrics is a part of HR analytics. So metrics is usually, when we talk about metrics are your KPIs, on which, let's say, every department has a KPI, every individual has a KPI on which the analysis is done at the end of the year. And when we
Yes.
talk about HR analytics, it's a much broader term. And as Amit said, that it could be functional, it could be cross-functional. I mean, the permutations and combinations within HR analytics are endless.
Yeah, Can I just be excused for a minute? My wife is sleeping, so there are people coming in the neighborhood house, and I have the keys.
Please.
1 minute, just.
Yeah, one second.
Thank you, Gaurav.
So
So
HR matrix basically gives you the data that the analytics can use to, analyze and arrive at some decision. Right, Gaurav?
yes, sir.
So will it
Atif,
be will it
yeah.
be correct if I say in analytics the output of metrics is taken as an input, and further iterations and permutations and combinations are worked out to arrive at more logical ends to solutions and to the problems, right?
Yes, Atif, you would not be wrong if you are saying this, but I would rather, how I would look at it is that metrics is basically a part of analytics. So when I say analytics, it's also cover metrics, because like we said that analytics, there is one phase wherein all the HR functions are generating data. So metrics is also that one function from where we see the data coming in, because
Yes.
not all the data is relevant.
Absolutely.
Metrics is that definition of useful data.
Yeah, and just to add to what Gaurav said, and so metrics is something that's there within a subset of as an HR analytics. But then the definition of metric changes from organization to organization, problem statement to problem statement. Initially,
Func-
like when I was working in L&D when we were deploying out the global quality compliances. The metric was that a specific set of people need to complete it within a specific amount of time, and they created that one benchmark line. So that was that metric that need to be covered. Now from that, as an organization, we have moved to a point where, because we are doing the learning, and the learning, we have roughly around 7,000, 8,000 learning items within the learning management system, and out of that a specific number is only for compliance. We want to then see how people are compliant. Now for compliance, let's say if you're working in R&D, you have 15 trainings. I am in HR, I just have 10 trainings, but the overall number is the same. For you to be compliant, you have to do 15 out of 15. For me to be compliant, I need to be 10 out of 10. So that's 100%. But then what about the part that the rest of the 6,000 or 7,000 learning training items that are there? What about that? Are you just utilizing the learning system for compliance, or either you are utilizing it for self-development? So the KPI or the metric that brings in is engagement. Now engagement is then measured by the trainings that you collect, the trainings that you request. That is how we start looking into engagement of learners or engagement of end users within the system. And that is where the engagement metric generates. So it's not a very set defined rule that, there are 10 HR matrix and it is common across everything. I do agree that, turnover rates, attrition, hire and fire rates, compensation ratios will be standard across every organization. But then the creative key metrics will be something which goes from use case to use case, organization to organization. And then analytics and data kind of backs it, gives it more input. And then you keep increasing those benchmarks for those metrics to, have a continuous improvement towards, let's say, creating better products, creating better services.
Yes. Thank you.
We have Bhavna, Priya. You can have your questions, please.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir. Hello, Amit. I'm Girish. I had a question. Can you throw some more light on the challenges of
Can
talent
you switch on your
analytics?
video first?
Yes, so it's actually network problem and
Okay, chalo, ठीक है.
yes, it's my rate. Yes, I can. Yes.
चलो, add it.
So I was saying, can you throw some more light on the talent analytics as it is being used right now, whether to perform performance metric or performance analysis, or whether it be recruitment or something? Can you throw some more light on how people analytics work and what are the main challenges of it in an organization that faces?
So I'll give a very generalized answer to that. So when we are talking about performance analytics and talent analytics in itself, there is another faction which is called the talent intelligence. Now, intelligence goes into multiple things, and the few key projects that I have worked on was when we so for Japan, we were hiring a lot of people in specific domains from different recruitment organizations, which were helping us doing the local recruiting. Now, over a period of time, we were looking into people who were coming in, staying there for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, then their performance per year, and then they were leaving. Now, this on a day-to-day basis, if you're looking at a year-on-year basis, it wouldn't matter much. But then slowly that kind of a behavior creeps in into the quality of products that you're making. So we wanted to do a root cause analysis on it. And that is where we were looking into creating that metric where we were thinking about benchmarking the quality of hire. Now, the quality of hire was related towards these recruitment organizations. We were looking into the people that they are bringing within the organizations, the tenure of each, and the performance of each employee year on year, and then giving them scores so that overall, let's say in a span of 2 years, what is the score of each organization that is supplying us with those engineers or software developers, and then which of those 10-15 organizations should we retain, and which are the last 2-3 that we should readily say no to. The other is where the other use cases where in after Brexit, when we were looking into our office mobilizations, we were looking into people and where to shift the new offices. Now this comes into play where we want to understand where people live within London, where people live within Wales and all these places, and which is the site which is going to be closest to them, what is the frequency of metros that are there, what is the cost of travel between places, and what is the most viable option. And this all depends on the data. So it's more why things have to happen, and then we start to do what needs to be done and what data needs to be collected. So a problem statement needs to be as crystal clear for that KPI to work, or for that decision making process to have that insight to be, there to take those decisions, or for the metrics to be clear. I hope I answered your question, Girish.
Yeah, so I was saying, like, how much of the biasness comes in when, if though we have a mindset, like people do have a mindset, like implicit bias works in without us knowing that. But how, when we are making a metric or a KPI, how much do you think that biasness comes in, or the causal relationship that that this causes this, and while making it, like, the foreigners might think the Asians are good at maths, and black people have more physical abilities than the white, and these kind of things comes in. Then when we are making a KPI or a metric or building it up, do you think these kind of biasness comes in, and later on it causes something to do with the performance analytics, or when we measure them, it's kind of goes where we don't want it to be, or maybe where we think it is, but not, it does not always show the truth of what we want to measure?
I think your question kind of stems out from the Netflix special code bias, where there is an unconscious bias in terms of artificial intelligence, machine learning, algorithm driven based decisions, where a system is more defined by the white faces that are there, or the Asian faces that are there, or the black faces that are there, and then do the physical attributions. I would love the point where HR predictive analytics gets to that point without the bias, but as of right now, when we do this, we only take a limited set of data. And when you're working with European organizations, we very specifically avoid race, ethnicity,
Religion.
and religion, and all these things, so that there is no unconscious bias when we are giving these things.
So Girish, just to put some more light on your question on what Amit said. This is my third European organization I'm working with. And as far as European organizations are concerned, and my experience goes, due to the GDPR law in Europe, European organizations do not record data such as race, ethnicity, religion. Even when you are applying to these organizations, they will ask for your consent if you are okay to answer questions such as your gender.
That is something which I have been having a long discussion with India Subcontinent HR as well. So because when you're doing any recruitment in India, the first question is like, what's your father's name, and if you're married, what's your wife's name, what's your wife's date of birth, and the justification that is giving in this, we want to put in retirals. Why do we need this information at the start? Because if you're collecting such information, then you're itself building up the base to take that unconscious bias. The difficulty over here, Girish, is that unnecessarily sometimes we take data in that influences. That is where we start looking into why such data points are required. HR is an ocean when it comes to data, but to do what you want to do, you need to also be very selective, and it has to be, let's say, very inherent nature that you avoid things that will push towards that unconscious bias, which sometimes becomes very difficult if you have to do inclusion and diversity KPIs, inclusion and diversity metrics, which span across markets. Because the understanding of diversity, where here in India, where there are conversations about South Indians being very good at English, or maybe Punjabis drinking too much, and this is something that is there. But for Europeans, for Americans, Indians will be Indians. Why are we doing the diversification ourselves? And that this is because internally we are looking into a closed box, and that needs to be looked away from.
So Amit, if you can allow me, to
Yeah.
summarize the answer for Girish, the simple is, we try to restrict the data to avoid any kind of bias there.
Yeah.
So we address, people are people. End of the day, the data reaches to people only, and they can derive a lot of bias out of it. So let's restrict it by not taking that kind of data. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
So,
true.
yeah.
So Girish, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It does.
Great.
So I had one more question, but I think
Please.
Rukmini wants to
Please,
ask.
you can keep asking, will not charge you for it.
Okay, so we use analytics to make it, we go into depth and make our processes more effective in the case. So when we do performance analysis and performance analytics, or performance appraisal, to be honest, in general, what we do, we call up an individual and talk about what we have done and this as a target. Doing analytics, putting in analytics in place, how can it be more effective? Sometimes we say that it is not only the individual performance that has brought him up to that level, it might be the group he is working in, but sometimes we appraise the individual more than what we do to the other members of the group. So does that help analytics help in solving that problem, or it makes it more efficient in that way? So
I would like to jump onto the answer here.
Please.
It is, I don't see much of analytics in it. See, performance itself is a very confusing issue, Girish. And for ages, it has been on these statistics that the performance has been evaluated. But lately organizations have started to realize that statistics are statistics. And the emotional element of, or the human element in performance needs to be dealt through it. And that's where, if you see lately, a lot of qualitative measures are being added to the performance analytics. Your analytics throws numbers. Numbers do not represent your performance. No, you could be a good salesperson, but during COVID, your sales is bound to dip. Now, if we evaluate you only on the basis of numbers, the results is going to be bad. And before Amit answered, this is why I jumped in between. The performance has different parameters associated to it. If we look at analytics perspective only, data perspective only, the outcome may not be true. You may be giving up the whole thing. Still the results, because results are not always in your control. And then that is where, the behavioral perspective of performance is getting added to the whole performance evaluation. So there is a lot of talk going about, that T-shaped performance evaluation system where, it's more about, your intent, it's more about your efforts than the numbers alone. Amit, you can add anything to it now.
Yeah, so just to add to what you said, Vivek, I think it's the emotional or the human element that's there. But if you're looking towards the data, then you should be supplying the data. You cannot make decisions out of thin air. So if you're looking into performance analytics, you need to tell the system that, and this is where the continuous feedback or anytime feedback comes in. If you want to measure somebody, you need to keep giving the system inputs. So that is where the entire idea, when performance is there, we look into the past 3 years or maybe the performance and potential matrix. But at the same time, you need to add in every month or every second week with your line manager how you're performing. That's there. That is where the feedback comes into play. That is where the performance potential comes into play, or what your manager thinks. Now, once you start giving those inputs into the system, you can start generating that model which will give you the answer. But I don't think certain line managers, I would say not everybody, have the time to feed in this into the system. So performance management or performance analytics is not a complete solution. It is always something which is going to give you an insight, but the decision is upon you, because you interact as an end user, as a line manager who is interacting with, again, a human that is doing something. It's all about cause and effect, right? So you're not giving enough data to get that insight.
And yes, Girish, at the end, it's. I mean, our performance, review is not like an exam where when we are going and giving an assessment and getting some numbers. It's not about that. It's human resources. There is a human part to it. So it kinds of aids performance review, but it will never give the complete picture.
No matter how good you do, you have to keep your boss happy.
True.
And that's the only parameter for your performance evaluation.
That's why people sometimes say things about HRs. So because of these things, like I was reading somewhere, like organization network analysis, like adding it to performance analysis, like it was a term when we uh, tend to study the organization's network. Like if an individual and boss has 10 team members, and the 10 team members need to be appraised. So at the 9 team members are surveyed and asked about, like, who do you go to, who is the go-to person when you have any problem, or who do you ask for advices. Like if someone, most of them tells name of the one person, like, but the one person hasn't performed really well, but he's more than average. He has met his limit, but not good that he should be appraised or promoted. But when we see that where he's helping, investing most of the time helping all the other 8 people around him. So and also the results that are being he's producing while helping others is really good. So don't you think that that parameter should be added? Like if we are thinking about data, and if we are doing this network analysis thing, and this should be brought in and
I
seen, like people.
So I think, just to answer you, Girish, so there is this term in the medical device industry called prescriptive diagnostics. Now, prescriptive diagnostics takes in data for ailments for the past 30 to 40 years, feeds it into a system. AI has the power to diagnose something, but by the end of the day, the doctor is the person who is take the final decision. And then you correlate this with HR, because here it's, instead of a person's life, it is the livelihood that is affected. So that is why whenever there is a performance management system, the end decision lies with the line manager, because that affects the livelihood of a person. So it's very much in line with prescriptive diagnostics, but livelihood is what is in stake.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Should we call names for questions, or
Yeah, I
Yes, please.
Amit and Gaurav, this was a really wonderful session for me. It was first time. I was really surprised to see the circus behind managing human being. There's so much of circus here. I mean, I know we don't go straight. We have to be managed. And every year the technology is changing, to how to manage human being basically. I can see a lot of transformation in HR. I myself did not incorporate it in my life as of now. I think I'm still old school type. I need to implement something, some few new strategies to do, understand basically the subject. But it was very informative and insightful for me. I enjoyed it.
Great.
That's it. I don't have any questions as of now.
Thank you for your feedback.
Well, Sangeeta ma'am, we have some insights for you. So as we know that you handle recruitment,
Yes.
so what we would like to do is we would like to ask you about some real life challenges that you face day to day in recruiting, because we have come up with questions that even recruiters come and ask us. So we would like to hear from you first, and then we would like to share that with you.
Sure, definitely. We can discuss it anytime.
We are waiting. Sure, let's see. Priya, I think you were a little late. We couldn't get a small intro of yours. Are you able to hear us, Priya? I think Priya is not there. Bhavna, how about you?
Hi, I have a question that
Yeah, please.
as HR, we are the people who handles, very sensitive data of our employees in the organization. So, what do you think? What are the ethical issues in this data-driven HR that these days this kind of problems are raising in every organization? So every time when people share us their and employees share us their data, so we take a consent from them that this will not be taken or for any other thing. So even for our studies, we will have time where we will have to take their data, right, personal or professional. So how do you think this is going to be a challenge in uh,
Yeah, so just to kind of go about that, Bhavna. So when there is this delving down into data, and when an organization is seriously looking into data towards answer, so I do agree with you that there's a lot of personal information collected, and then there has to be a sign off in terms of the usage of it. But while we are doing that, there needs to be a privacy charter to be set into place. Now, that privacy charter could come in from, let's say, the country that you are in, or maybe the data privacy charter, which is for your organization, because that is where the bottom line is. Now, where how you started the question is we get a lot of personal or sensitive information to process. My question here would be what kind of it? Is it something that's really personal? Is it something that is going to be date of births or blood groups? Then the question arises, why are you collecting that? And if there is no business reason behind it, then there is no point of collecting such data.
yeah, but even I think in the Indian scenario, many of the Indian organizations are still old school, so we still have those data.
So Bhavna, that's the beauty of the data driven HR. Whenever we start working on data, and I don't have experience of like many organizations, but all the three organizations that I have worked with, and all three are data driven. Whenever we start a data collection
There is a
kind of a
PR
thing,
done.
there is a we question every question that is being asked.
Yeah.
Let's say or a new employee is joining in the organization, and let's say on that form there are 10 questions. We will question all the 10 questions.
Yeah, I would like to just add to that. So recently when we were doing the entire recruitment overall for APAC, so what we were also looking into is because smaller markets, right? Southeast Asia, which is very predominantly similar to how India operates. A lot of Indian people over there as well. So they're asking all such information in terms of, so what does talent operations does is they create this form where they collect all that information. Before deploying it, they run it through data privacy officers. Now, coincidentally, within our organization, the data privacy officers are also the reporting and people analytics team. So we then question those questions that they are asking, validating everything. Out of those 10 questions, what is only required passes through and then goes into production. And that is where it is filled in. So it's not just from one part of HR, it has to be a collaborative effort. Like an organization needing to function, every part of the organization needs to work together, be it R&D, be it sales, marketing, or everything. Even for an HR function, the sub functions itself, the subsystems itself need to work together, collaborate, so that they are having that, synergy in terms of what the data is being collected. Are we violating something? And there's a very nice term that we use, has the PI been done? So PI is basically privacy impact analysis of every data point that is a host, and which is very so for me, Indian organizations, because I have a lot of friends working around in different India's based organizations, they have started to ask these questions. And now when they have started to ask these questions, their recruitment time has gone down. So the TAT, from the job requisition to the total recruitment, the final joining date has gone down because of the reduction of the parameters or the fields that have been asked. So each has a cause and effect, and that is how you kind of go ahead and validate. So that charter needs to be, the summarization of what I'm trying to say is a charter needs to be developed for the data usage, which justifies why you're asking the data that you're asking to the end user.
I have a question.
Sure.
Actually, sometime back, almost 8 years back, I got a project to work on compensation and benefit, wherein I collected data about 200, 300 plus. My job was to collect variable pay and the CTC.
Yeah.
I mean, the complete CTC with a separate column for variable pay, because that company was having lots of differentiation in their hierarchy. They wanted to benchmark the salaries and the positions. I actually couldn't do this project because I worked for almost 45 days. They gave me 21 technologies, all Microsoft technologies, starting from Microsoft, almost all the technologies, and from 3 years to 15 years of experience. So the columns were like this way and this way, horizontal, vertical. The entire that Excel sheet was like huge. I still have it. But that time I was really not knowing how to put in place with a formula and just throw the graphs and show the analytics of it. So, and that complete data we couldn't present it in the way it has to be presented. It didn't come to me, but yes, the data the company has definitely used it, but I couldn't do it. Had I known this thing, maybe I could have done it. So I think in this salary benchmarking also, this analytics kind of a setup can be used.
It
Yeah.
is actually used.
Yeah. So what you
They
are
were-
stating that is that when you're doing the salary benchmarking, let's say there are multiple technologies that you've spoken of. So we say there are
There
10
were 21 technologies I was working on. I had to speak to people working on the technology. And trust me, everyone cooperated. Whomever I called, they were telling me the salary because I told I'm working on a project. They gave me the CTC, they gave me the variable pay. I had about 21 columns this side and 21 columns, almost 8 columns this side. I had the data, but I really didn't know how to present it, how to put a formula in this thing. So once I did a course on compensation benefit, there they used the formula in which the entire data was shown in a graph saying that this has to be shifted here, this has to be shifted here, and that's how you can organize your organization's hierarchy plus benchmarking. So I was doing a very huge job instead of a smart work.
So I'm not an HR person because I'm not studied HR, but for me, when it comes, data is data.
That data
My-
was like huge data, which was not projected in the right way. Actually.
Yeah.
See, I'll data is only powerful if you are able to interpret and visualize it.
Yes.
Perfect.
I was able to interpret it in the Excel format itself. Whatever the Excel sheet says.
So it's like a classroom or a session can only be powerful
In
when
fact,
you're
I
able to visualize it.
I ended up speaking to one of the HR manager, vice president HR manager through my brother in Microsoft, and how they do it inside Microsoft, and he gave me the entire feedback. But Microsoft salaries are way above, compared to any other companies. So that data, if I keep it here, it wasn't matching, so I had to remove it. But maybe there was a smarter way to project it.
Correct. Analytics is not just about data.
It's also about storytelling.
What you do with that data makes all the difference.
We are getting such projects now. Companies like mid-segment companies, what happens is they start the company, they start hiring people. After 3-4 years, they feel that they're paying someone much more than someone else. They end up hiring experienced guy. They pay them 3 lakhs, 4 lakhs. Then they hire freshers, interns. They pay them only 10K, 12K. But end of the year when the appraisal comes, there is lots of bias in that. Like, I have put in so much of effort and he's getting in lakhs, I'm getting in thousands. So here the company comes to us that we want to set up things for us. We want to benchmark the salaries. We want to set up the hierarchy. An organizational structure has to be defined. Actually, I have worked on 3-4 projects, but this was a failure project which I'm talking about. This was for agility service. I mean, it was about 800 employees. 800 employees into 21 technologies.
Good. I also know HRs who started hitting data. Let's see beyond data. Let's look beyond data. But good. Yes, any more questions? Lakshmi, Mohit has, I think Mohit would have some questions on analytics. And we have Jeff also today. Jeff is our iSkill Hub learner from Cameroon. Hi Jeff, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. It's really a great privilege for me to be connected with you guys.
But you were late today. I'll have to do your data analysis. How many times you can late? That's what analytics is teaching me. Any questions, Jeff?
No, not really. No question for now. Maybe as we advance, some questions might pop up.
Sure. Yes, guys, if you don't ask question, then we'll have to end the session here. Lakshmi.
Yeah. So.
Yes, Rukmini.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to know. So as we said, there's all this checking and analytics and biases in this, but so how do we do this background checking? I mean, that is somewhere kind of linked, right? Like, because I know in Europe and all, as they said, it's not allowed. I mean, doing biases, but in India, it's like common. So kind of, contradictory or coincident. I mean, so how do we deal with that?
So what you're talking about in terms of recruitment background checking is completely disengaged from analytics.
Right.
Because that is something that the recruitment and the talent function does to hire people, which is necessary. It's like a necessary evil.
I think Sangeeta would have a lot to share on it, because she has started working on background verifications for organizations. Sangeeta, would you like to answer this?
No, sir, I haven't personally involved myself into the subject. I've just taken the order.
Okay. So Rukmini,
I have given it to someone else to work.
Correct. So Rukmini, what typically was your question when you spoke about background verification?
No,
were you talking about the biasness in verification?
Yeah, the biasness or maybe the data, because that is, we also take a lot of data from that also.
Correct.
So I was just thinking like in India, of course, there might be, but as they said in Europe and all, they don't see all this. So I was like, how do they, what is the European background check? There are slight, I'm confused
maybe, what data to check or what is permissible under their law, they would have different standards.
It varies region to region.
So it will vary from a region to region, country to country, and that's how they arrive at it. What should they check?
And also, Rukmani, to add on here, in background verification data, it is something that from a HR reporting or HR analytics standpoint, the team generating those insights is not involved. Rather, in this matter, particular paralegal and data privacy officers within that company are involved.
It's
So
basically
yes,
third party.
Okay.
so yes, Rukmani, I mean, at a first glance, it looks like a topic related to HR reporting or HR analytics. But if you take a deeper dive, it actually is a very, sensible question to be asked from a compliance or a data privacy officer of that company.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Amit and Gaurav, we have been talking about organizations. You all are associated with organizations which are data driven. Can you talk about organizations, or maybe give one or two examples from companies which are not doing the data collection, which they ought to do, and in what way they are losing out? Maybe you can take up any domain: marketing, HR, sales, production, operations, the kind of data collection which they ought to have done, and they haven't done it, and the result has been a disaster or catastrophe, or maybe huge losses, the kind of data they should have collected. Any examples, illustrations, so that we get a good, better, deeper understanding?
Gaurav, do you have anything? Because I will go in a minute. I'll just go in a minute. I know that you have an example on this one.
Sure.
Sure. So, Atif, let's say Sangeeta ma'am, let's take the same example that Sangeeta ma'am was taking. So there are startups, they start hiring, they pay some people more, they pay some people less. And at the end of the year, or let's say after 2-3 years, when their business is more streamlined, they are running out of fundings and still not achieving timelines, what happens? They are stuck in a jeopardy because they are not earning anything, they are just burning their cash, and and they are not basically getting into profits. So at that time, they then start benchmarking salaries. So it is not that when you need it, then you do it. It is a complete cycle which goes on. So even if I talk about our current organization, we have a rewards team. And whenever we just go and meet those reward people, so India Rewards guy is actually my friend. Whenever I actually go and meet him, he is continuously benchmarking the salaries for some or the other job family. So that way, whenever we see in our current organization, even we see the new joiners coming in and we ask, everyone is satisfied in terms of salaries because they do not get below the benchmark. I mean, they get the average salaries which are there. They are not getting higher, but they are also not getting paid lower.
So the idea entirely is around the fact that, you pay more than the market benchmark.
I'll just be back.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
You pay more than the market benchmark, but then you dabble around the midpoint of that job grade. So when the person is comparing with the market, he's getting more. So Philips has like 36% more than market when they're paying. But internally, you might be 10% less, 10% more, 50% more, 50% less. You never know. Because one of the data security domains where we do this all this, we very specifically say that the discussion of compensation is a violation of the data privacy guidelines, unless it is with your line manager. And disciplinary action could be taken. This is where those guidelines come into play. This is where the privacy charter comes into play.
See, Atif, I have been in touch with a lot of organizations who have grown over the years. They started small, and as they grew, they started increasing the salary without, it was more of an emotional thing. Yes, organization is growing, people should grow. And then there comes a time when you start bringing in new people from the industry. And probably they are coming with some kind of benchmark. And this is where, the disparity in wages will start coming in. Maybe your existing people are getting higher than because company has grown faster. Maybe they are getting less and the new people are coming with a higher salary. And then they get into the benchmarking thing, and then there is a lot of data that is being collected and worked around and created something, which is more a performance driven, or, as they say, a value based pay culture is now coming up. So there are a lot of cases where if it is not, let's not say that data, it could be, if it is not scientific, it is not viable. Then there is some kind of bias there. Whether I'm paying high or I'm paying low, it is because I feel so. And there is no justification. A lot of Indian companies are like that. So you don't have to, go with a microscope. Just walk out in the market. 8 out of 10 organizations would be like that. Except few data-driven organizations, which Amit and Gaurav are talking about, which are very few.
Yeah, and just to add to what you're saying, Vivek, there are so there is this point when I kind of agree with Atif as well. So when we look into, and how Gaurav also said that people are continuously benchmarking salaries.
Correct.
And when you see the growth in terms of base benchmarks or baselines and grow baseline, this either can mean two things. You're growing as an organization. And the second thing is the quality of hire is good. The quality of hire is nice. The people that you're recruiting are better. And that is why you're compensating more. And that also directly translates into the value, the services, the products that you're making. So this can also be a, unconscious indicator in terms of why your base salaries are going up, why your benchmarks every year or every quarter is going up.
And just to highlight here, we always focus on whys rather than hows and whats.
Yeah.
Gaurav would remember, we were in an awkward situation when our line manager wanted to know what your CTC is. We joined a little earlier and line manager came later, and we felt so awkward to know, and when we told him our salaries, he was also awkward. So that's all keep happening. Good.
Yeah, thank you. So essentially, benchmarking, salary benchmarking is a classic example where a lot of analytics is taking place, and you have very beautifully connected it to quality of hire and the output in products and services. Interesting. Thank you.
That's kind of what I do. So, take one thing connected to another thing. This is where the play in terms of analytic comes in. So I'm kind of getting that thought process in is something that needs to be there, that needs to be promoted more. And I think that's what Vivek also tries to convey, that it's the logical thinking, it's the thought process that matters.
Right. Yeah, guys. Questions?
I see a very silent participant today in the call.
That is new, no?
Priya, can you hear us? Mohit?
Chaitanya, don't you have any question today?
Not today. Not for today.
Mansi.
They can answer recruiting also.
No, sir. No questions for today.
Okay.
I already had that BGV question in mind, but I think that has already been asked by someone. So.
Okay.
See, now Aadhaar card is our Aadhaar card is playing a very vital role in this BGV, because from last 5 years, in schools from 2008, not 2008, sorry, 2016-17, they've started incorporating Aadhaar card everywhere. So the background verification Aadhaar card is helping a lot. In fact, the 10th class students hall ticket is also coming with Aadhaar card print.
Okay.
Aadhaar card right from their SSC, 10th grade, bank accounts, everything is being linked. So I think after 10 years, once you type the Aadhaar card, the background verification is automatically done.
Just
So
like
many
social
people
security
are doing
numbers.
it.
Yeah.
Many people are doing it when you even go in to buy a SIM today. So
Yes.
they will just take your thumb impression. My daughter wanted to, participate in a sports event in Haryana. So it was a
Amazing.
district level event. So they said that, and she unfortunately did not have the Aadhaar card at that time. So they said we'll, let her participate this year. But from next event onwards, if she doesn't have an Aadhaar, she'll not be allowed. So they have been, strict in implementing the Aadhaar linkage. And I think that is really helping.
They want some Aadhaar of everything.
Yeah, because I have access to Aadhaar data. The moment I type the Aadhaar number, I can see from which school they are and which organization they are working, where is the PF account linked, everything I can see.
Great. So any more questions, or shall we bring it to a close? Silence.
As of now, no.
Good.
One question just to Amit and Gaurav. So I heard about success factors. So success factors is it like an all-in-one solution for everything right from recruitment to the BGV thing?
So first, what's the BGP?
Background verification.
Background verification.
Oh, okay. So the background verification is something that has to be done independently. Otherwise, for the entire life cycle, you can use success factors as well. It's in the top quadrant for the ERP systems, but it has recently matured into a very nice HR information system.
But it started off as a learning management system.
But just like Cornerstone.
Okay, and what between just out of just for information, between Workday and Success Factors, which is the preferred tool which is being used by the organization? Because I think essentially both of them serve the same purpose. So just for information, I wanted to ask.
So when we talk about that, Workday is the most preferred technology. So initially, 5 years ago, it was SAP. 8 years ago, it was SAP. Now, any organization that goes in with the mindset of getting a good HRIS for that system, Workday is the single answer that people will give you, because the modules that are there in Workday are amazing. So you can just plug and play with the modules. You can have absence put in, compensation put in, you can plug it out, and then you can put in other things. The integrations there are done beautifully. So you can work with Workday, Cornerstone together, Workday, ServiceNow together. Workday also works with success factors as well. So that amount of customization and the linkage, based on the linkages that are there, Workday as a solution is brilliant.
So to answer your question in a nutshell, from a technology point of view, Workday is one such beautiful tool.
Very expensive.
It is very expensive, but that is one such tool which has eliminated the need of managing databases, or let's say employee databases individually for all the several domains.
Also,
so in our organization, the only database where employee data is stored is Workday, and rest, be it the IT apps or the HR apps or any other apps from where they pick up the employee data, it all flows from Workday.
So we call it the single source of truth. So everything is there. So very canonically, it's called the single source of truth. And why people also go into Workday, and just digressing from the HR analytics part, is that Workday itself has a very strong analytical suite. It's called the Workday Reporting and Analytics. And then they have two more products within their ecosystem called the Workday Prism and the Workday People Analytics and Insights, which is their own engines for AI and ML driven things, where we could be replaced completely. but then that needs to be taught. It is not something that comes out of the box. There needs to be a system in place which will teach that ML engine what has to be calculated. So one of the reasons why Workday is expensive, but then it is an amazing tool to work with.
So
Okay.
which brings me to another question. Sorry, I'm digressing off the topic.
Yeah.
So there's a domain called human capital consulting, which is known as HR consulting. So whenever so are these like a must know skills if anybody wants to like get into HR consulting, or who has an experience in HR consulting? Is like knowledge of success factors of Workday is a must from their end?
So when you are into HR consulting, it's not technology driven. If you look into any ERP system or any HRIS system, the essential skeletal structure is going to be the same. It's like humans. Everybody has the same skeleton structure, but everybody looks different. How everybody functions remains the same. If you understand one, you'll be able to translate it to the other. So the base understanding, and this is common across, if you want to do consulting for HRIS implementations, you want to do consulting for case management systems or for learning management systems. If you have experience in one, you just need to read about what the others can do, and then you can start consulting with it. And then your added years of experience gives you that, plus points or star ratings in terms of how good you consult. But then technology consulting is completely different. Let me just also throw it in there.
I think we all HR should stop this technology implementation. Otherwise, they will never need us anymore.
That's what I was about to ask you. So though it is a very comprehensive topic, Amit, but do you think that all these tools will, very soon they would eliminate the need of a human intervention?
So Gaurav, I would like to answer your question.
Yeah.
If these tools come into picture, then the whole department name should be changed. The whole practice name should be changed to bot resources rather than human resources.
That will not happen. The data can be given. Am I audible?
Even so, just to yeah. So just to give a parallel background, me and Amit are also working on a AI-driven bot. Now, very personal and first-hand experiences that when we are working with a bot, although we have made decision trees, we have given it and feed in things that whenever this response will come, you have to give this response. Still, the bot doesn't function that way. We have to go and train the bot.
Like you can create a bot which will hold a conversation for your HR queries for good 10 minutes. But
exactly.
That is there. A binary tree, a decision tree can be made, which can, let's say, if you deep dive very deeply into it, it is like GBs of coding and everything. It goes into a maximum of 10 minutes. After that, the system either has to be done by data scientists, but the decision that we took was that the moment it goes a little beyond that, we'll push it towards a actual human chat agent with all the information that has been done upon.
Yeah, and Gaurav, even if the technology comes in and all this AI will come in, there would be a requirement of somebody who needs to train the bots, who needs to train the system on what to do.
No, but Gaurav, the number would be less, na?
Yeah,
yes.
Number would
yes.
And today, as Amit said, that the technology is, is there, but I'm sure the technology would evolve over a period of time, and I don't see that happening.
Yes, Gaurav,
So,
the number would come down. That technology is evolving. So I will give you a second example of HireVue. Sangeeta ma'am, you would have heard about this. HireVue is the tool wherein you deploy it. Does the first level of recruitment. Many of the companies which deploy HireVue. So HireVue is a platform where our first level recruiter will put in questions. There will be the candidate will come, he will answer the questions, he will record the videos, and then there are two options given by HireVue. Either the machine will analyze the response given by the candidate on its own capabilities, or there is a human required to interview it. So as of a statistic released by HireVue, 90% of their customers have adopted for a human person who needs to go and review the things which are done by HireVue.
Okay.
So things will change, the way we do things will change, but if we remove human from human resources, there may be for some instances it might be a good and smooth thing, but for a majority of things that we have seen, it doesn't function very smoothly. I mean, there is a human intervention, a human emotion required for human resources.
And just to add to that, so when we are talking about all these things, and I've done a few fair bit of RPA implementations in terms of process optimization. So when robots come into play, it does not completely remove headcount, it reduces headcount. We have not evolved to a technology where removal of headcount is an option. It is always reduction of an headcount.
That's what I said.
Just to add to it, Gaurav, technology will evolve, and so will the human being.
Yeah.
The rules will change. Their existence cannot be, you are no more required because you have bots. Because then you are doing a more intelligent work. Now you're using these bots and using these tools better to accomplish your task or to accomplish more better tasks. You cannot eliminate human from that organization. But yes, if you don't evolve, a lot of people have lost the job during last 1 or 2 years also. A lot of people have gone back to the jobs also by enhancing their skills and getting into back to work. So those changes will happen.
True.
Yes, Atif.
Yeah, Gaurav and Amit, recently, I had applied for a job. I mean, very, very reputed organization. While applying through their website, they had this list of competency questions, competency-based questions, a lot of questions where you need to really cite examples from your work life where you had exhibited, certain competencies. Now, I was wondering, and they receive hundreds and thousands of applications through that same kind of a channel over their website. Now, are all these questions, because these are not quantified, see, it's as it is apparent when you are supposed to write sentences and sentences, basically highlighting your competencies based on certain work situations in life. Do you feel that again there is the science of analytics also goes behind the scenes when it comes to when we write competency questions? They have a standard format of 5-7 questions, for instance, and then like me, there are thousands of applicants who are writing those answers from their own lives, work lives, and they are trying to bring in the behavioral aspects into the answers. How they analyze these answers?
So Atif, first of all, I would like to give this a little twist.
Okay.
In analyzing those responses, analytics doesn't come into picture. What exactly come into picture is AI, which is artificial intelligence.
Okay.
So there are two things. One is analytics, which works on the quantification, and another one is AI. So AI is the thing which works. They have these engines called NLPs and natural language processing things.
Yeah.
So they process the natural language, generate some quantifications, and on those quantifications, then the analytics work.
Okay. I wasn't knowing this.
I hope I didn't made it too technical.
No. It was pretty easy to understand. Yeah. So those language. What's the term you used, Gaurav?
Natural NLP, natural language processors.
Oh, it took me to neuro-linguistic programming, by the way.
NLP is, yes, it is neuro-linguistic programming, but when we talk about AI, it is natural language processors.
The NLP, by the way, NLP is one of the very, let's say, not so spoken tools when it comes to the storytelling and data visualization as well.
Fine. Now I got it. Okay. Thank you.
I don't see many questions now. So I think we can bring this evening to a close. And then we can have a follow-up session again. sometimes later.
Thank you, Amit and Gaurav. Really insightful. Thank you so much.
Yes, I mean, you guys do a lot of job.
Indeed, it was very insightful.
Doesn't look outside, but yes, you're doing a lot of job. So I hope it helped everyone, especially the ones Bhavna, Mohit, who have not been into a system, and this could be a new thing for them, because so Bhavna, why is emphasizing it again? There's a routine exercise for us where we keep engaging, we keep discussing, we keep learning and helping others learn. So you can keep in touch with us, and you can continue to be a part of these sessions if they add any value to you.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Amit and Gaurav.
Thank you,
It was
sir.
nice
Thank
session.
you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Amit and
Thank
Gaurav.
you. Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
insightful. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you, sir.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.